As I was developing ideas of how to present the ideas in this video, I was going to have like little sayings, little pieces up front of each section, little inspirational pieces maybe. And for one section, what I had in mind was to use a saying from the Talmud, which is to save one person is to save the world whole. To save one person is to save the world whole. I came across this, a number of times over the years, and had always thought that the illogicality of it was a kind of like poetic thing, like occurs so often, like in Jewish writing, also in French philosophy and French writing. There's a kind of like love of something that doesn't quite make sense. That's kind of illogical, but I've always thought that the illogic of it was actually the key to opening some kind of mystical understanding, and that's why I always took this phrase to be like, to save one person is to save the whole world, is to save the world whole. But then I came across another translation which is less mystical, less illogical, and that's if you save one person, if you save one person, it is as if you have saved a whole world. If you save one person, it is as if you have saved a whole world. And this makes more sense to me. And actually, this reminds me of something along these lines, an experience from Vietnam that I wrote about, and that I'll read here. I went one day to treat a young girl and saw that she was quite sick. I tried to get the family to take her to the hospital, but they wouldn't. Every time they took someone to the hospital, they ended up dying. I tried to get her fever down and then went to see if I could get a doctor to come and check her out. The doctor was on his way to a Christmas party and said he couldn't go until late the next morning. He said it sounded like she may have had encephalitis with spinal meningitis. He told me what medicines to give her, and I went back and gave her some injections. I went back to check on her in the morning, but she had died that night. I felt horrible and guilty. I felt badly for the family, but didn't know what to say. They ended up comforting me more than I could comfort them. It was a Mountain Guard family. I wrote parenthetically, and I think I was trying to indicate that they were being stoic. But I had second thoughts about that, because I have second thoughts about saying that they were stoic. In some ways they were, but I remember going one time into a village the morning after it had been overrun by the VC the night before, and there were like bodies all over the place, and this one woman was bent over the corpse of a man that I assumed was her husband, and she was just like wailing and wailing and wailing and wailing. So I guess Stoicism is certainly not a universal attribute among the Mountain Guards. I think they've demonstrated, though, that they can take a lot more pain without expressing pain than most people can. Anyway, later I sat alone and thought about what had happened. Tears came to my eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to really cry. I began to think of what I could have done. I could have forced the family to take her to the hospital. I could have forced the doctor to come and treat her. I could have figured out how to give her the treatment that could have saved her. But I couldn't bring myself to getting wrapped up in guilt. Without thinking about it, I realized that it was unreasonable to hold myself accountable for what I could technically have done. We do not do what we can technically do. We do what we can do within the context of our lives as a whole, and our lives as a whole are woefully inadequate. We can try throughout our lives to overcome our fears and our ignorances and our stupidities, but we cannot do this retroactively. But there was more to it than that. I had within my mind a melodramatic scenario in which I would get all wrapped up in guilt and remorse and self-recrimination and self-pity, but I couldn't bring myself to play out that scene. Without thinking about it, I realized that this was not about me. It was about the dead girl. I thought about her. As I thought about her, I pictured life as a tapestry. There are, within the world, 4 dimensions. There are the 3 dimensions of space, and there's a 4th dimension of time. If we go back a little along the coordinate of time, we come to what the world was like a little while ago. If we go forward along the coordinate of time, we come to what the world will be like in a little while. I imagined that a large tapestry before my eyes had captured all 4 dimensions of this world. The whole world was there in great detail, and you could follow the scenes along and see what happened before and what will happen next. I saw within this tapestry a hole. It was dark behind the hole, so it was a shredded black hole within a part of the tapestry that showed a part of the future. And I imagined what would have been there where the hole was. I pictured the girl growing up and getting married and building a house and building a new home somewhere in her village. And I pictured her living and having children. And I pictured the things that she would do and the effects that she would have on the people around her. And I pictured the things her children would do and the effects they would have on the people around them and their children. It was kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, but instead of imagining all the bad things that would happen in her absence, I imagined all the good things that would not happen now that she was dead. I didn't cry then. I knew all this then, but I couldn't feel all this then as strongly as I can feel it now, so I didn't cry then as I cry now when I remember her and know the world's loss. This was, I wrote that in like 1987, I guess. So, if you save one person, it is as if you have saved a whole world. This, what I just read, kind of like, makes that a little clearer, I think. It's like, and I also had thoughts of extending this into analysis of opportunity costs. John Rawls wrote, in A Theory of Justice, he wrote, he used indifference curves to justify disparities of income and wealth. And I think that the idea being that it's okay if some get rich if it helps others get less poor. And within that context, it doesn't matter what the spread is, as long as the poor are being helped. An alternative economic analysis, a more, certainly more humane one, I think a more reasonable one, more accurate one would be the concept of opportunity costs. When you expend your resources one way, you foreclose the opportunity of expending them another way. And somehow I had an idea that I could tie that into this idea of saving one person by saying, as a corollary, that if you fail to save one person, it is as if you had destroyed a whole world. It sounds a little bit too heavy. I actually probably won't use any of this in the video because I'm thinking of paring it down to just theory without the fluff. Or maybe I'll do 2 videos and have one with more New Age kinds of, or mystical or religious or inspirational kinds of stuff. So I'll see what I do.